You've probably never heard of it. A disaster so bizarre, it seems like it came straight out of a cartoon. But this one is real. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919. Yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like, molasses in a flood, wreaking havoc on a city. And it happened in Boston. At first glance, it might sound like something out of a South Park episode, but trust me, this sticky disaster was no joke. Before the flood, the city of Boston's North End was a thriving industrial hub. People were working, going about their lives. But in the shadows of this ordinary day, an accident was waiting to happen. It all started with a molasses tank, an enormous, 50-foot-tall steel container holding over 2 million gallons of molasses. But here's the thing, this tank wasn't built to last. In fact, it had been leaking for weeks. People could smell the molasses in the air, and it had started to creep down the streets. Some even noticed the tank shaking. But no one thought it would burst. No one thought that something so sweet could turn into something so deadly. Then, at 12:30 p.m. on January 15, 1919, the unthinkable happened. The tank exploded. A blast so loud it was heard miles away. The molasses didn't just spill out, it came rushing through the streets like a tidal wave, moving at speeds up to 35 miles per hour. Molasses is thick, right? But in the heat of that day, it was anything but slow. It slammed into everything in its path: homes, businesses, people. The sound of the flood was deafening. Imagine the rush of a tsunami, but with the unmistakable scent of molasses filling the air. The flood wasn't just a nuisance, it was a massacre. 21 people lost their lives that day. And over 150 more were injured. The molasses trapped people in its grip, and the force of the wave knocked buildings off their foundations. People and animals were swept away, buried in sticky brown goo. Rescue teams couldn't get to people fast enough. The molasses was so thick that it was like quicksand. Once you were stuck, it was nearly impossible to get out. The streets turned into a horrifying molasses swamp. But how did this happen? The investigators were quick to find answers. The tank's construction was rushed, built quickly with thin steel that couldn't withstand the pressure. There were design flaws. The molasses tank was supposed to hold just enough liquid for a local refinery, but poor materials and rising temperatures made it a ticking time bomb. Even worse, the tank's owners had been warned. Neighbors had complained about the vibrations and the leaks. Yet, they did nothing to address the safety concerns. And when it exploded, it wasn't just a tragic accident, it was the result of negligence. In the weeks that followed, the city of Boston was unrecognizable. Streets covered in molasses, homes destroyed, and lives lost. It would take months to clean up the mess, but even then, Boston would never be the same. And while the city tried to rebuild, there was a bigger, lingering question: how could something like this have happened? In the years that followed, safety regulations were overhauled. And Boston's disaster became a somber lesson in the importance of structural integrity and industrial safety. Today, the Great Molasses Flood remains a reminder of how something as simple as a tank full of sweet syrup could wreak havoc. It's a tragedy that's still talked about in Boston and beyond. It's a strange, sticky piece of history, but it's one that changed the course of industrial safety forever. So, the next time you see molasses in the store, just remember, the Great Molasses Flood of 1919 is more than just a quirky historical footnote. It's a reminder that even the sweetest things can turn disastrous. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this sticky tale, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more history you never knew you needed.
I'm looking in the mirror, so foggy, but I've never seen clearer. I don't really think anyone can save me, and honestly I'm not really sure I want saving. I like to be my own worst enemy. There's no risk if you don't try.